already going?
Oh, I just started it.
Okay.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming in to our monthly meeting here for the October Washington Gleaning Network meeting. So in just a minute, we're going to be hearing from the folks at 21 Acres who are going to be talking about the awesome work they're doing with the community, the farmers' point of view on gleaning. And I'll let them introduce themselves here in just a sec. So a couple of quick announcements. Our next meeting in November is going to be featuring Tony Zapia and Katrina Six of Common Fruit in Ottawa, Canada, where they are going to present a really innovative software solution they developed for gleaners. So if you could take a minute, I'm going to try to put this in the chat, to fill out the survey to kind of register for the demo so that you can follow along in real time at that meeting. That would be awesome. Let's see if I can do this. Putting a link in the chat. There we go. All right. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Rachel Bishop, who is from UVMN. Most of you guys know her in Leavenworth, to give us a quick recap of what the advisory committee has been up to, and then she'll turn it over to 21 Acres. So just so you're aware, Rachel is has volunteered as the first chairperson for the Washington Cleaning Network Advisory Committee. This chair position is kind of currently on like a rotating volunteer basis and is intended to help guide the discussion and the planning and so on for the advisory committee and ultimately guiding the direction of the network. So Rachel, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Um, yeah, so one of the duties of this chairperson role for the advisory committee is to just give a little recap to the whole Gleaning network of what we're working on. I can't remember how many times we've met, but it hasn't been a ton. And we meet once a month, similar to the network. We meet before the network meets. And yeah, they're basically right now we're forming our group and getting to know each other and trying to prioritize what it is that we're doing. We have made a list of projects from feedback from everybody in the network and um, those of us on the advisory committee that we could potentially work on. But at the last meeting we had, we discussed the importance of getting feedback and information from everybody who's a part of the Gleaning Network in Washington, and using that information to figure out what the advisory committee will do moving forward. So in January, hopefully, we will be sending a baseline assessment. That's what we're calling it. So please be on the lookout and be prepared for this. It will be a series of questions very similar to what Sarah put together when we were first forming our network, just to learn about the individual organizations, the data that you all of us are collecting from our gleaning efforts. And then one of the things we're also going to be asking is, what does success look like for your organization and gleaning? And we think that's going to look different across the board. So excited to hear your thoughts and read through those questions and answers and use that information for the committee to move forward with projects that benefit the whole network. And I just wanted to make everybody know for sure that the advisory committee is not some all-powerful group. We are not making decisions for everybody. The purpose of our group is to represent the group, get feedback from the group, and just be a smaller group of people that can work on moving these projects forward so the whole network doesn't have to do it. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that. I don't view myself as like the one with the answers, so hopefully you're not assuming that of me and Sarah. Um, and then, yeah, Sarah did say we have this new chairperson role. This is a rotation role, so I'll be doing it for the first 3 months, and then someone else in the advisory committee will volunteer to take over. So it's just a, yeah, rotating thing that we're all going to get practice with. And think that's a good summary of what we're working on so far. So in November, we can share with you how it's going with this baseline assessment that we're creating and adjusting from what Sarah did maybe 2 years ago now, or a year and a half ago, something like that. Um, so anyways, I'm gonna pass it on to 21 Acres, and I'm super excited to hear about their point of view of gleaning as farmers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction. Ansley and I are super excited to get to be here and talk with you all today. Have gotten a chance to meet some of you and glean with some of you. And for those that we don't know yet, thank you for being here and excited to get to know you a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see some slides that we put together. One moment. Awesome. Can you all see, let's see, this slideshow?
I saw it briefly and then it went.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Ansley, can you see this?
Yes, I can. Hey y'all, my name is Ansley Roberts. I am the farm manager at 21 Acres. I use she, her pronouns. Also, I am in our lovely farm office, which does not have fantastic internet. So if anything happens, just like wave frantically or something. And I have been farming for 10 years. Specifically, I've been farming with a lot of nonprofits in and around food access and transitional employment. So I love the work we're doing with Gleaning, and I'm really excited to be here today.
And my name is Issy Steckel. I use she, her pronouns. I am volunteer coordinator here at 21 Acres and also part of our seasonal farm team. I'm in my first season here at 21 Acres, but I've been farming for a few years now, specifically at nonprofit and educational farms that focus on food access work. Previously, before that, I was working in education with strong belief in trying to reduce the access and barriers to education. So combining those two worlds in my role here at 21 Acres has been really wonderful. A little bit more about our farm. 21 Acres Center is located in Woodinville, Washington, which is on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, including the Duwamish, the Stillaguamish, the Sammamish, and the Snoqualmie. And the work that we're doing here is focused around the value of agroecology, building soil health, and supporting local food systems as a solution to climate change. And the work that we're doing here is really trying to reduce the harm that we have on our environment and also on communities. And so building a more robust food system we know needs to be inclusive and needs to bring in all members of our community. And so food access work is a really integral piece of how we really support our mission here. And 21 acres is not a lie. Our space in total is 21 acres, but it's broken up in a number of different ways. So we are farming on about 4 acres of certified organic and salmon safe production land. We also have about 6 acres in active restoration where we're preserving our wetland spaces and building out biodiversity in those vernal wetlands. Then we also have farm infrastructure. We have our farm market and our LEED Platinum certified building here. And then we have wildlife corridors and community garden space as well.
Lovely. So gleaning's been a really amazing opportunity for us as small farmers. It's really interesting because people talk a lot about gleaning as diverting food waste, and just the topic of food waste is really vast in and of itself. We the standards for what is marketable is really, really high for vegetable producers, and we're working with a highly perishable product. So, something like, I actually have this red lace mustard that has a bunch of holes in it. Like, I can't sell that. But it's so pretty and it's still nutritious. It's a little floppy right now. So, we do grow this food because we want to feed our community. And there is also a really interesting flip side to that. I heard recently another farmer talking about, there is no such thing as food waste on the farm because you can reincorporate that crop into your soil and it becomes organic matter, which is a really vital part of soil management for folks who are trying to farm regeneratively. So it is always kind of this balance for us of, we grew this food, we put all this effort into maintaining this crop. We want to be able to feed our community, and both alternatives are an option.
And one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning as well is we're going to share a little bit about our experience and then also open it up for questions at the end. But if you have a burning question or a thought that's coming up or a comment or something that you relate to or resonate to with what we're talking about, please feel free to add it in the chat and we will make sure to come back to those at the end as well.
Great. We can go to the next slide. So we're really, really fortunate that we have several really amazing partnerships with organizations that come and glean on our property. We have a few folks who are on kind of a monthly schedule, and then we've also gotten to work with Harvest Against Hunger this season and do some drop-ins too, which has also been really fun. For when we call the gleaners, is kind of like that mustard I showed you, it's still good, nutritious food, but it has damage, i.e. like a huge issue we deal with out here is flea beetles, and they attack anything that is a brassica crop, so your mustards and your bok choy, and they just put a million tiny little pinholes in them, which is really infuriating because they're still delicious. Then, we are dealing with that really perishable product. So lettuce specifically is a crop that has a really short window of when it's really marketable in the field, especially in the height of summer. It can bolt, which basically causes it to become a little bit more bitter. But we've actually learned through our lovely gleaning partners that there are lots of things you can do with lettuce in all of its ranges of life. So we've been really grateful for partners who come out and are excited to glean stuff that's past its prime. And then another reality for farmers, especially small organic vegetable farmers, is that we are intentionally creating a buffer when we're doing our crop planning for what we plan to sell versus what we're growing. So for us on our farm, that's about a 25% margin. So we're growing 25% more than we think we're going to need. And that's for the inevitable pest damage. The inevitable deer decided to really go crazy on this lettuce this year. That can either lead you to be exactly where you need to be with your outlets, or it can lead you in a position where you say, holy crap, I have like 100 heads of lettuce that don't have a home. What do I do? Call the gleaners. Also, if there's the reality of your market channels are kind of always changing, and there are times where you think that a restaurant's going to show up and buy 100 heads of lettuce, and then they don't, and then you got to kind of scramble and reconfigure. And so that's been another opportunity for us to work with gleaners too. Next slide.
Awesome. This is the part that feels most heartwarming to me about gleaning, and really something that I look forward to in the work that I do, is the pride and joy for everybody involved in a gleaning experience. A lot of times with our regular gleaning partners, the volunteers who come out on those programs maybe help support the mobile markets that they're working in, but they've never actually been out in the field and seen exactly where that food is coming from. And so getting to be out there with those folks, getting to provide the education about what goes into harvest, seeing the real labor that is involved in that agricultural work, really understanding the nitty-gritty of how does climate change, changing weather, changing pests impact the food that we're producing, and getting to have those conversations, and also just getting to taste things. So having volunteers get to try some of the kale in the field and describe what they think it tastes like, or noticing that a certain flower tastes like this other plant because they're in the same family, and getting to have those conversations is just really meaningful. And I think it's what brings that personal connection to this work and helps continue the energy and motivation to keep doing the hard parts of it as well. It just helps us better understand what's going into what's building our food system. And gleaning, as I was saying before, is a really integral part of how we manage distribution on our farm. Looking back at our 2023 distribution data, we saw that about 62% of all of our product was distributed to food access organizations, and about 10% of that was gleaned. And so through having partnerships with food access partners that are both by contract, so buying some of our produce, as well as gleaning, we're able to really have an outsized impact in how much of our produce is being able to be given to food access organizations and go straight to our community. So that's really exciting. These photos are from this year's gleaning events. We were able to glean a bunch of blueberries. I think we harvested about 25 pounds of blueberries that day to go to teen feed. And it was really amazing because the blueberries are outside of the bounds of our organic certification. And so we don't generally have a consistent outlet for those. And to be able to bring in gleaners to support that work and make sure that our blueberry flush found a beautiful outlet was really rewarding and tasty.
And we've been lucky. I specifically on this farm have been gleaning with a lot of the same partners for 4 years, which has been really, really, really cool. And, you know, a big piece of that is just creating relationships. I think the beauty of a local food system is that it is so much based on relationships. And that really figures into how you're able to figure out the logistics of gleaning, because while it is an overall like a huge plus for so many different facets of for the farm, for the food access networks, it does take planning. And we've learned a lot of things that work and don't through trial and error. I think one of the biggest things we found is communication is key. You know, we are really, really lucky that we're a nonprofit. We have this resource in ISSE where we have a volunteer coordinator who can really like help steward these activities. Most farms are not going to have a volunteer coordinator. And you're taking that farmer's time from weeding, from dealing with everything else. And so trying to be as direct and like concise with communications, as well as really trying to plan efficiently. And it's like, I think the biggest thing is, you know, if a glean's not able to happen on either side, just communicating as soon as possible. And then another piece is like, we've really found scheduling is really hard. There's when that organization can get the food to their clients. So if it's a Friday and that's the only day, that's like the day that works best for us in our schedule to glean, but then it's a bunch of lettuce and they're not going to be able to get anything to their customers until like the next Wednesday. Sometimes it really doesn't work out. And just trying to be flexible on both ends of like, you know, we thought we were going to have a whole bed of lettuce for you to glean, and it turns out the deer got there first. And yeah. And another piece also is farmers are notoriously not on their computers. So, you know, we're out in the field. And so we it's going to be different for every single person you work with. And personally, I find, if there's something that needs to be communicated quickly, like text or call is always preferred. And it's a lot easier for folks to answer really quickly than to email sometimes. And we have also found it's been really, really, really awesome if an organization is able to have somebody on staff that has worked on a farm before or is even an avid gardener. Because I had someone recently say to me like, "Oh, well, you're just harvesting. That's easy." And there is a lot of skill and labor that goes into recognizing like, sure, you can just totally clear cut a bed, and sometimes for gleaning, that's what makes sense. But sometimes you're really trying to focus on a crop at a certain stage of harvest and, what really is that threshold for what we're hoping to get that day. And it's really helpful to have people who've had experience, not necessary, but sometimes it's helpful. And the biggest thing really is continuing to build and foster relationships. It's the thing that is the biggest and most important part to me about not only our gleaning and food access partners, but everyone who send produce to from our farm. Because, if you have a relationship with that person, you're going to be able to say, hey, this wasn't exactly what I was expecting. And like, I really want to like work through this with you. And it's kind of the beauty of community is working through what's working and what's not. Also, we found it's really, really helpful to create intentional spaces where you're kind of recapping. We ideally like to do kind of an end of season and beginning of season meeting that just talks about the end of season one's more focus on what was working, what wasn't working, and starting to kind of scheme and dream for the next year. And then the spring one is really more of okay, we actually know what grants are there. We know what resources we're going to have this season. What are we doing? Let's figure it out. And it's been really beneficial to have those spaces too. Next slide.
Awesome. So as we were kind of thinking through this meeting and what we wanted to share, Sarah asked a really valuable question that I wanted to focus on a little bit, which is, how do you see the future of gleaning evolving, and what are our hopes as a small farm in a regenerative space, kind of thinking about what could this future look like and how are we all part of creating that? And I just wanted to touch on a few of those pieces that were coming up for me. I think I'm really drawn to this work because I believe that food justice and really promoting the future that we want to see requires storytelling and requires continued conversations. And I think gleaning becomes this beautiful little space where we get to really share time together out in the field with our hands in the dirt, learning together. And I think having more people involved and having all the actors in our food system getting a chance to learn more about what's happening on the ground is what's going to continue that storytelling. And I want to see that continuing. And so if you've had a positive experience, sharing that with others and inviting more and more people to have that hands-on experience. And then also, Ansley and I were reflecting on just how much we all saw and felt and experienced the impact of COVID-19 on our food system and how the limits of what a globalized food economy has and how much small farms and our local food system was able to pivot and provide the necessary mutual aid to continue feeding our community. And gleaning becomes a way that we were able to continue to do that work. And my hope would be that we can continue to see the fiscal support that was enacted to provide COVID relief during that time to continue to build out the food purchasing requirements for institutions like Food Access Partners, but also for schools to be able to continue to strengthen our local food economy and really invest in what we know can support us as like community-driven food systems. And I think that this network seems like a really exciting way to continue those conversations with so many different people involved in lots of different parts of this work, to be learning from each other, to, as Ansley was talking about, to be continuing to build those relationships so that as things come up or that we have challenges, we have that trust and knowledge of what each other are doing to be able to lean on one another. And oh yeah, that's what we have. So we just wanted to also open it up for questions. I will stop sharing so I can take a look and see if there's anything in the chat as well. But feel free to chime in either in the chat or just take yourself off mute, and all questions are welcome.
Yeah, my name is Etty. I am from Fields of Grace in Eastern Washington, Tri-Cities area. I'm wondering if you have ever recorded ESGs. I just had a commercial farm that we're working with bring that up, and they are going to report our gleaning from this year on their report. Have you heard of those before?
Can you define ESG?
It is environmental social governance, and one of our volunteers is affiliated with the Disease and Pest Board here, and he works with all these farms, and he just kind of mentioned to them, that we're a gleaning organization, and this commercial farm reached out and said that they were going to report ESG. So I kind of looked into it, and it's like essentially like a carbon offset.
Yeah,
So
that
I had no idea. I thought it was really interesting. And I asked, like, well, how do you report it? Is it like, application? But she said you literally just type in, like, this gleaning organization came to, our farm and gleaned this amount of produce. And then that's it. So I want to, like, follow up with her and see, like, what the benefits are. But I thought that was really interesting, and one of the first times that has happened to us.
wow, that's cool. That's a very different scale of farming than we're at. But yeah, there's also a lot of really cool funding opportunities of thinking about, the community environmental impact of reducing food waste, and it's really cool to get to hear kind of what
Yeah,
they're doing.
I agree. I'm like, okay, I think this is like even bigger than we might realize.
Totally.
Put us on mute. It'd be interesting to have a conversation or a session around ESG and how it might relate in the future. And again, I think that's probably a much larger scale than many of us are working on when it comes to farming. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't know all about it, because I think it could be a really, really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I agree. My baby's in the background, so I'm not yelling, it's her.
I'm curious, our organization has a gleaning program, and we're sort of balancing the insane amount of food like chard and kale that we get that's hard for us to move quickly before it goes bad. And so we've sort of been working with farmers to not glean all of the chard that they have, but some. So I'm just curious about your perspective and your opinions of gleaning organizations coming in and not picking everything that you were hoping they would take, and how that affects your program.
Yeah, I personally feel really, really strongly that I would rather the organization take food they know that they can distribute and not take it and like let it rot somewhere, because it's very much going to create methane gas if it's rotting in a container somewhere. Whereas if I can just till it into the ground, that's better for my soil. And I would rather that food have a home than rot. And I think it really also plays into that it's back to relationships, right? It's always a continuous song and dance of like what works best for each party, and making sure that everyone's needs are being met and that we're all staying flexible, because that's the reality of farming, is just constantly being okay with everything changing all the time.
Yeah, one thing too that I found really helpful as I've been managing these relationships, and as I email a week before the glean and I share a list of the product that I think we'll have available, and it becomes a really great chance to talk through with whoever's going to be coming to glean. You know, how many people are you bringing? What feels reasonable in the amount of time we have? Also, what markets do you have coming up? What plans do you have to move that food? Is there anything that really doesn't fit what you needed, or is there something else that I didn't list that feels really valuable and important? And it becomes, in addition to those, spring and fall sessions, also another chance to just have regular contact and have a week in advance of knowing you really don't want any of those mustard greens. Like, let me figure out maybe bringing in another partner the next week, or finding another way that we're going to be moving those, kind of really seeing it as a holistic picture of not just separating some food for gleaning, but really thinking about where are the many different ways that food can be moved, and just having as much information just helps us make those decisions more thoughtfully.
Well, I have like a kind of general question, but kind of related to as you were talking about like relationships. What are some ways that gleaners can really like foster and grow those relationships with local farmers, just from your perspective? What would you be looking for? It's again a broad question, but from a gleaner, if you were to work with one.
Yeah. Are you wondering more about like specifically finding farmers, or just like creating a positive relationship, or maybe both?
I guess both. I was kind of leaning towards like creating a positive relationship, but both seem accurate.
As far as finding folks who are interested in gleaning, there in our area, we're in Seattle, there's an organization called Snow Valley Tilth, and it's farmers that are in the Snoqualmie and Snohomish, and more recently they added the Sammamish Valley, which is where we are. And they have a listserv, and it's a great place to just reach out to people and talk. They're also, Tilth Alliance is connected with a lot of folks. There are a lot of organizations that are kind of working tangentially with a bunch of farmers. Just go to a farmer's market and ask people like, hey, would you be interested in a glean? And then as far as fostering positive relationships, I feel like, I said earlier, communication is huge, just because we're juggling a whole bunch of stuff. I have had situations where, we have a glean all set up. Issy's done all this communication on the front end to make sure that like we've done our field walk, we've said what we have available, we've scheduled somebody to be there, we have all of our supplies out. And then it gets canceled the day before and you're like, okay. So communication is huge. Being able to stay flexible. There's always a chance that I thought I was going to have 100 pounds of something, and it turns out it's probably closer to 20. And yeah, just finding where every farmer is going to be different too. So finding what works for that farmer as far as communication, and just, I find with any relationship, working or otherwise, just being really intentional about how do you like to communicate? Like, do you prefer like text or call or email, or, what are days that are good for you? And also, if you can, just because it's really fun, I mean, I really like it, go see if you can walk on the farm. It's nice to like get to make that relationship not virtual, and get to understand the surroundings of where you might be gleaning too.
Yeah, there's a lot of gleaners that ran Fields of Grace before me, and they're very diligent. And so, a lot of engineers, and they require us to go out, look at what we're going to be gleaning,
kind of assess like how much it is, where we're going to park, what is the best place to park. Seems like parking is like the biggest issue for us every single time. It's like when you get a group of 10 volunteer cars, it's like, oh my goodness, where are they going? So I just think like it is really a good investment to maybe like have your own like little indicators on like where to park, even go over it like before with volunteers, like this is how we're parking. I know it sounds silly, but it's just like huge because sometimes there's roads that can be blocked and, there are things to look out for. So I just think that is a really good note from 21 Acres is like, that is a huge thing for farmers to actually like meet you and for you to show them like you care about the crop too.
So we were on a call just before this with a group that is involved in our farm to food pantry work across Washington State, and they're the ones that are doing direct purchasing from local growers in their communities. So, continuing to develop and build funding models to support that direct purchase is one of the things that I think we can do, and I think that's one of the reasons that this Gleaning network ties in so nicely with some of the other activities that hunger relief organizations are doing to develop those relationships with small scale growers. In addition to that, are there other things? Like I know that we've explored putting a CoolBot unit at a farm so that they can quickly cool product down out of the field before it's picked up. Maybe it'll be a couple hours before the gleaners are able to get everything out. Are there other things that would be helpful from your perspective that would be resources that gleaners could bring maybe to you if we got creative?
Yeah, that's a great question. So definitely our space in our FRU is really limited, and we have big hopes and dreams about having other ways to keep food cold while we're harvesting. So that would be a huge asset to a small farm like ours. Also, we have started to work with some of our gleaning partners to bring their own harvest material. So that includes crates and gloves and harvest knives and things like that. And we found that that's been really successful with some, but for others, that is a barrier. If we only have a certain amount of supplies, and sometimes we're trying to do other things at the same time that we have gleaning programs running. And so we can't always share all of our totes. And so having more funding to help smaller gleaning organizations be able to have their own gleaning supplies and materials would be really useful to be able to kind of amp that up. And then the other thing, I'm not sure if this is exactly in the same camp, but I'm really excited about some of the more drop-in gleaning opportunities. So say we have a last minute glean for apples, for example, and we're really struggling to find an outlet for those. We've had some success with posting through this network and being able to get the word out, but I'm curious about other systems to really know who to reach out to and when so that we can schedule last minute gleans like that.
Are you guys familiar with the the Good Food Network? I'm totally just gonna drop that one. But I found that it's a really wonderful spot to communicate in the mostly the Puget Sound area, I believe, but I think they're expanding throughout Washington. We have they were awesome enough to give us a space there to have our little like Washington Gleaning Network forum, but it's also connected to a lot of other forums where people might be buying or selling or finding people to connect with. And so yeah, I would plug that one.
Thank you.
I was also going to say you can always send it to me and I'm happy to share out with King County Farmer Share agencies, many of who are already connected with you, but can get a bit of a broader reach.
Sweet.
Another question, in some of our conversations as building a gleaning network, we've been hearing from folks who are wanting to start a gleaning organization, but some people are a little bit hesitant about reaching out to folks and not sure how to reach out to farmers, and some people are worried about insurance and a series of things. But curious what your top advice is for those who are wanting to start a gleaning network and like just starting the conversation with a farmer, just like the first thing they should say to you to build that partnership.
Ooh. The kind of sassy part of me is like, I know you're really busy, but um uh I think, you know, especially I feel like every farmer I know that is farming in this area wants to be part of a food system that feeds everyone culturally appropriate food that is available when and where people need it. So I feel like even just, I'm sure as a nonprofit organization or aspiring nonprofit organization, you have to create the elevator pitch anyway. And just really like leading with the heart, with the mission, like, this is the community we're feeding. We really want to get food out. Like, is there a way we can work with you to make that happen? And also being okay with sometimes a farmer is really, really strapped and like might not have the capacity, and it doesn't mean that they don't want to. And sometimes you can find something really creative, like just have a farmer on speed dial and they're like, I got lettuce now. Can you come get it? Yeah.
And it looks like Mariah dropped some great stuff in the chat as well, some resources. So for the Good Food Network and some other producers, a list there it looks like. So yeah, anybody else have any like thoughts or questions, or while we got these awesome guys here to answer them in real time, please feel free to speak up. I think it's been a really awesome conversation, and I just feel really privileged that we've got a chance to talk to y'all and get your point of view on gleaning, because that's so valuable. We can talk to ourselves all day, but it's amazing to get that outside perspective. So thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to add? No. So yeah, I guess if there isn't any more questions or anything to add, thank you all so much for coming and having such amazing conversations with us. And please reach out if we can do anything for you. Always happy to be part of something here. So thank you guys for doing the good work, and have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, and I would just say, yes, thank you both so much for being here, for joining us. I love the way that the sort of the Venn diagram pieces of the farm to food pantry work and the King County Farmers Share and the gleaning, capacity building, all those things kind of overlap. And if we can find that way to be mutually supportive to one another, I think it would be really beneficial for everybody. And then if as a quick reminder, please, if people have, like, if this has started any or triggered any ideas in your mind about something that you would like to talk about or do a deep dive on for Washington Gleaning Network as part of these calls, Sarah's doing a great job of filling these and providing really good content. But if you've got something, let us know, because no pun intended. Let us know. Sorry, it's been a long day. Let us know, and we'll make sure that we get that lined up over the coming months.
Thank you all so much for having us, and just an invitation to please, if you have any other thoughts, to follow up with me and Ansley. You're also always welcome to come visit us out on the farm. We are out here and would love to show you around and welcome you to our space too. So don't be a stranger.
And we're also open as a public park Wednesday through Saturday, so you can just walk around whenever you want within the confines of those days.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.